Okay, so we were given Act 4, Scene 1 in the Macbeth, a desolate place near Forres. So the outline of this presentation is first I'm gonna go through the plot and conflict, afterwards Macbeth and the witches, so a character analysis, the witchcraft and evil as the themes, then Shakespeare's language and the witches. Then I'm gonna make a comparison between Macbeth, the original, and the manga edition. Then I'm gonna look at the development of the previous scene, and the apparitions that the witches come with. And at last I'm gonna make a conclusion. Okay, so the plot and conflict. There are 3 witches, and they all are chanting in a circle as they throw disgusting and foul ingredients in a bubbling cauldron. When the witches have completed their hellish brew, which has been approved by Hecate, Macbeth then enters afterwards. He then demands the witches to answer his questions, and the 3 witches, they chant, and with the sound of thunder, different prophecies and sights appear. Then an armed head that warns Macbeth, a bloody child, who then tells Macbeth that no man born by a woman shall harm him. Another child, then another child with a 3 in his hand, and 8 kings and 1 with a mirror, followed by a ghost of Banquo. Macbeth is then told that Macduff has fled to England, and then in the end he decides to act upon the deed of murdering everyone who could stand in the way of him staying king. Macbeth then asks the 3 witches to predict his fate and what he has to do to stay king. Okay, so the character analysis of Macbeth. At first he seems overly confident as he meets the 3 witches at their lair with a boldness. He doesn't seem scared of their scary appearance. He's also ignorant. He doesn't really seem to understand the true meaning of the apparitions, but he analyzes them so it matches the hopes of his future, or the future that he wants to meet. So you could say that he's somewhat blinded of his own arrogance. He's also offensive and rude towards the witches. And I have 2 quotes that demonstrates it. How now you secret like in midnight hags, and I conjure you by the witches you profess. However you come to know it, answer me. So he has this rude tone towards them. And then afterwards, there's something that changes in Macbeth, or something, in Macbeth changes. And have a quote for it. The castle in Macduff I will surprise seize upon 5. Give though it show. Swart his wife with babes, and all unfortunate souls that trace him in his line. So he acts like rashly and arrogant towards it. And he's also acting on emotions rather than deliberations. And it's shown by the fact that he chooses to act on the prophecies instead of trying to understand the true meaning of it all. So yeah, a character analysis of the three witches. At first they seem a bit frightening and spooky, as they're standing in a lair and it's all like a bit dark. Yeah, and it's also the way that they chant, and they chant all the rhythms, and they make these hellish brews. It also helps to make it all a bit mysterious, as they're speaking about these speaking riddles and half truths, so you don't get the full meaning of it all. You kind of have to analyze it and understand it. It also has this like wicked and evil tone to it. And I have a quote: "For a charm of powerful trouble, like a hill both boil and bubble." So this quote, it's shows that it's related to the devil. And yeah, they also have this gruesome tone to it. And I have a quote for it: "Finger of birth strangled, bab ditch delivered by a drab." Yeah, and to sum it all up, or to finalize the analysis of the witches, part of the sisterhood of the witches are that they stay together, as they appear to be stronger together. And that's an old Greek goddess of witchcraft and magic. So the themes in the first act of scene 4, or in the first scene of Act 4, the first theme would be witchcraft/evil, as the presentation of the witches, as it's a presentation of the witches in the 17th century. In the 17th century, witches were seen as being dangerous, powerful, and related to the devil, as they would often induce nightmares and have these demonic possessions, and have this close relation to the devil. They would often also use special ingredients from either or like scary ingredients, poisonous ingredients, and yeah. I also have a quote for the third witch. So, "Scale of dragon, tooth of wolf, witches, mummy, and maw of golf, of the ravened, salt sea shark, root of hemlock dipped in thy dark liver of blaspheming Jew, gall of goat and slips of your silvered in the moon's eclipse, nose of Turk and Tatar's lips, finger of birth strangled bab, ditch delivered by a trap, make the gruel thick and slab, at the fetro, a tiger's children, for the ingredients of our children. And this shows that they used these weird ingredients, and they had this very strange way of mixing it all, which made them seem kind of scary at first sight. Yeah. So Shakespeare's style of writing, so the language of the witches, overall they talk in these riddles and half-truths, so you kind of have to analyze it to get the full meaning of it. Yeah, and they use these verse rhythms, and that's 4-beat rhythms, and the effect of it is mantra-like. Yeah. So, and then they also use these Shakespearean words, and by that I mean that they combine connotations, as meanings from the words in one. So the more accurate images, and that means that they have a more accurate image and a playful language. Yeah. And then they use these semantic clusters. So overall, the different parts, limbs and entrails of something bigger. And by that, the witches, for instance, they have these supernatural, and by that I mean that the witches have these supernatural meanings to them, and yeah, it all has this meaning to it. Yeah. Then there's some more about Shakespeare's style of writing. The 3 apparitions, except the 8. Yeah, so this shows a bit more about the witches and how they were pictured in the writing of Shakespeare. Then there's the comparison to Shakespeare's Macbeth, the manga edition. So it's mysterious and dark, and has this like forbidden mood and feeling by the way that it's represented. Yeah, and like the typical objects that identify the witches are old women with these long sharp nails and bony fingers. So you get this like gross and evil thought about them when you see them in the pictures. Yeah. And how the characters are represented. So Macbeth, he is presented in this like clean, with ample hair. He's young and he has this like clear, hygienic skin. Where again the witches, their pictures as being old and scary with like this wrinkled old skin. So yeah, they picture them like they picture Macbeth as being the hero, where the witches are these scary, like supernatural beings. Yeah. And the development, so the comparison with Act 1, Scene 3, where we compare the Act 1, Scene 3 with Act 4, Scene 1. So the third witch talks to Macbeth, all hail Macbeth, and shall be king hereafter. When Act 4, Scene 1, Macbeth says to the witches, tell me if your art probes to know one thing. Tell me if your act can tell, so much shall vanquish issue ever regan this kingdom. And yeah, it has this it shows that the witches, they predict that Macbeth is going to be the king, and they still predict things afterwards. So it has this like correlation to each other.